Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Defub21, and guess what we're talking about today? Yes, we're talking about the Nintendo Switch 2017 presentation. How should I? Well, where to begin? I mean, in terms of, it started off, impressive enough in that you've got this kind of nice kind of lasery show type thing and all these fancy kind of Switch stuff going on these big screens. But, Nintendo has really kind of Nintendo is really kind of, stuck to or just should I say reinforce the stereotype that the Japanese publishers as a general rule are either extremely mediocre or terrible at these sorts of things. I mean, Sony, I suppose, being the exceptional. Sony is while still a Japanese company, is a highly westernized one at this point. You have a situation where, again, like a lot of the Japanese publishers, when they did do press conferences, that's fallen by the wayside to quite a substantial degree over the last couple of years at E3. The worst train wrecks on memory, for the most part, were things like Konami's press conferences in the past, Square Enix's press conferences in the past. They'd always been messy, to say the very least. And the Japanese kind of executive / corporate class, they may have many strengths to them, but they tend to be pretty terrible pitchmen. I mean, this guy is, you might be seeing him on screen, depending on doing some video editing. But, I'm looking at video playing at the press conference as I speak. But Mr. Kimishima, or the current CEO, he may be a pretty decent guy, but he's not a Reggie Fils-Aimé, and Reggie is not that fantastic a salesman either, compared to some of the people, particularly either Sony or Microsoft. And the fact that Fils-Aimé was kind of this is a brand new, this is a console launch, and the fact that effectively the highest profile, most recognizable kind of Western part of the company's leadership, although he is very far down the pecking order in terms of where he falls in terms of the leadership of the company, and the fact that he was relegated to kind of a video, pre-recorded video, where he's talking to Mr. Iwata, and the guy's actually working on Zelda. I can never remember his name, keep forgetting it. It's a bit of he should have been there. He should have had, given some stuff to talk about, because again, these guys, the Japanese guys, they just I mean, even in their own native language, they just come across as being, again, somewhat, what's the word for it, rigid / stone-faced. And when they do try to be kind of quote unquote cool, they end up just looking weird or silly, like Suda51, the ridiculous thing he did, kind of going Rawr! Or the guy who was overseeing development of Splatoon 1 and 2, again, kind of a bit frankly ridiculous. In terms of the actual content of the press conference and the kind of the tone of it and all the rest, the two biggest themes coming from it are, well, although certainly on the software front, there are others I'll get into, but on the software front, one, yeah, they've got Zelda for launch, but if you're a Nintendo fanboy, Zelda for launch, great, wonderful, fantastic. The problem is that Zelda's relevance to the core gamer market, let alone the kind of hardcore gamer market as a whole, let alone the kind of blue ocean casual gamers out there that the company is clearly trying to go after as well with the Switch, Zelda's relevance is minimal, to put it mildly. Super Mario, or Mario, is the high profile character. He's the one that the mass market recognizes. I'd even say he's got more relevance to Zelda than Zelda does among core gamers. The fact is, the most recent Zelda games, which are effectively kind of sort of open world sandbox light action RPGs, have been outstripped from a development and technology standpoint quite dramatically by particularly The Witcher 3 of this generation, but even the Assassin's Creed games of last generation really made the stuff on the Wii look obsolete in comparison, grossly obsolete in comparison. And even now Breath of the Wild looks like a huge step forward for Zelda, but it still looks like a last-gen open-world sandbox game. In terms of kind of the first-party software, you've got Zelda at launch, but we're waiting till Christmas for Mario. Assuming Mario comes out on time, Nintendo have a bit of a notorious history of not being able to pull that off. Principally because they're credit where credit is due. They're very quality orientated. They don't release a product till it's absolutely done. I assume the whole concept or idea of day one patches is still anathema to them, so they will polish and refine for however long it takes. The problem, again, there is the two of the most high profile franchises. Yeah, they're coming out this year, but only one of them is at launch. The one that's at launch does not have much widespread core/hardcore gamer interest, and the other one isn't out till Christmas. Mario Kart, I've got a Mario Kart coming, that's always good, but again, in the case of kind of Mario Kart and Splatoon, these are both rehashes of they're not true sequels. They're just effectively what's the word for not collector's edition, kind of final edition versions of the Wii versions of Mario Kart and Splatoon, with like extra content, maps and new characters thrown in, and probably a few new maps and so on, and that's pretty much it. And again, very few people played those games because only 12 million Wii U's or 12.5 million Wii U's were sold. And I think the install base for the sales numbers for Splatoon were about 5 million, which is great considering the size of the install base of the platform. But 5 million sales means the bulk of the gamer audience has never played Splatoon. But even so, it's still, two rehashes of two existing games. Mario Kart is on its technically now its ninth iteration in the home console space. On with this version for the Switch, there was a version for the Game Boy Advance, there was a version for the DS, there was a version for the 3DS. So there's been well over 10 Mario Kart games from Nintendo to date. So that's, it's a great game, it's, great fun, but it's still, at this kind of stage in the game, it's, it's good that they're getting all of these tentpole things out within the first 12 months the system is on the market, assuming the games hit their release dates. But even so, there's no new, there's technically one or two new IPs, in the sense that you've got a new minigame collection, a new Waggle minigame collection. I'm rolling my eyes, just so you know. And you've got this, what is it, the Bash, the boxing game, which is again another Waggle game. But, it's just, it's not, and I'll get onto the second part of the whole software thing, but it's not, in and of itself, it's not enough. And if you look at the other part of the key software issue, which is third-party support, effectively, when it comes to the third-party support, what you basically had is a few trailers for, I think, is it Xenochronicles 2 is apparently coming out this year. If that actually happens, that'll be rather impressive, because it took them an age to make the previous game, and that'll be a nice to have on the system if you're a fan of Japanese RPGs or kind of Monster Hunter type games, because I think it's kind of like one of those kind of Monster Hunter type games, isn't it? I'm not really familiar. Again, I haven't played any of them, I don't have a Wii U. But again, outside of that, from the third parties, Atlas and so on, what you were basically getting was announcement trailers, but no actual gameplay. Or if there was, it was extremely minimal gameplay. And then even worse, you had a few like developers coming on stage saying, Suda51 and so on, this thing looks great, I'm sure we'll make some games for that. But with nothing to show, not even, trailers, CGI trailers, let alone actual games. And what's particularly as well, again, the real kind of, £2,000 elephant in the room. Well, obviously, I think elephants weigh a lot more than £2,000. Well, I could be wrong on right on that, or I could be wrong. But anyway, was the third parties, or the near complete absence of them. You got a 5-year-old game, Skyrim, announced for the platform, which will probably fall somewhere between the original and the enhanced edition, in that it's running on hardware that is more architecturally modern than the 360 and PS3. I mean, I think this Tegra X1 supports Shader Model 5 and so on. So you've got that, but it won't be as visually impressive, particularly when running on the TV, as the enhanced edition on PC or current gen consoles. And then you've basically got EA announcing a FIFA game, which may well be, if it is a port of the current gen one, is likely to be severely downgraded the way the 360 PS3 versions of FIFA, or one version of it, was released by EA once for the Wii U's launch, and then they promptly abandoned the platform, along with, I think, Mass Effect 2, or 3, or I can't remember off the top of my head. Again, the sales dropped off. Ubisoft, which actually wasn't here, rather interestingly, Ubisoft has historically been the most supportive of Nintendo of the Western publishers, and they weren't. Unless I missed something, they weren't here. They weren't there. They're rumored to be working on an RPG for the system, which is kind of involves both Nintendo characters and the kind of Raving Rabbids characters. That's the rumor anyway. Whether it actually happens or not, I don't know. But that's pretty much it. I mean, again, EA, I would expect them to be, to anything that comes out of their mouth, considering how quickly they dropped the Wii U, is in terms of, we'll support this platform, yada yada yada. I'm not even sure why they bothered to turn up. Why they bothered to send one of their kind of seniorish sales pitch guys all the way to Japan for that announcement. I'm even wondering why they're bothering to put FIFA on the platform. Maybe Nintendo gave them some money, who knows. But if I were EA, if I were any of the Western third parties, I mean, they've effectively abandoned supporting Nintendo's handheld platforms. 3D Western games on the 3DS are mostly of the kind of, indie variety, rather than kind of big Western AAA publishers. I mean, they made a good few games on the DS, memory serves, but not really on the 3DS. So again, the prevailing theme is, there seems to be a good bit of, the big stuff. There's, very nice to have games, Splatoon 2 and Mario Kart coming out this year. Hopefully a new Mario 3D platformer at the end of the year, and Zelda at launch. But again, the launch lineup, I think, is like 5 games at present, from what's been announced. Which is, okay. But it's, well, actually not okay, it's terrible. I mean, the Wii U had, again, much more, particularly third-party support, like 20 plus games. Now, admittedly, most of them sold terribly, and then support dropped, third-party support, particularly Western, again, third-party support basically evaporated. And the Wii was allowed to just, by the Western publishers, to just die a slow death over, I think at this stage, 4 years. But it's just, from a software side, again, presentation is the worst of the 3 platform holders. Why they didn't bring out Reggie, who is not as good as the people at Sony and Microsoft at this kind of stuff, but he's certainly better than Nintendo's own executives. I don't know. The fact that the vast bulk of the Japanese games announced were not actually shown off; they were just trailers, CGI trailers. Another bad thing, again, when you have people from Sega announcing, saying, "Oh, we'll support it." Oh, the beast! Be quiet, you! Shush! Well, my self-recharging alarm system. Well, he feeds himself, and I put food in his plate. Just interrupted us there. I apologise, but before hopefully I'll get back on track. To reiterate, the lack of a lot of actual gameplay of games being shown off. A lot of the games that were announced, these publishers put out games on the Wii U last time, but it took them years after they announced the games at launch before they turned up. The Wii U, the Switch will need games now. It needs games this year. Where they're coming from, I don't know. There were a lot of games were announced to come after launch for the Wii from third parties that promptly disappeared, particularly Western ones after the Wii U sales dropped off a cliff after the initial launch window came to an end. The list just goes on. And you stop that. If you heard him, he's growling. There's so much going on. I mean, on the other side of the thing, from the kind of if you want to go on to the second issue, is the hardware. They're basically, again, they're still positioning this as a home console. And it's a home console that costs $299. I'll get to a bit of a personal gripe, a local one, on the pricing in a moment. Or at least I'll do a separate video on that, I think. But they've gone on, again, $299 for the system at launch. It's not a match for, it's supposed to be a home console. It's not a match for the PS4 and the Xbox One. You're not going to see multi-platform games ported over to it. Again, there was no mention of any hardware specs during the presentation at all, so that we can pretty much rule out, if they had some technological secret sauce in there, one would think they would have mentioned it. So one can assume that's out the window. The other key issue as well, and this is going to, again, they may well have made the exact same one of the same strategic mistakes they made with the Wii U all over again. For those who, I assume everyone knows at this point, but for those who don't know, the Joy-Con controllers, Nintendo is put a recommended retail price for a second set of Joy-Con controllers that is $75 and about the same again, I think, in euros, for a set of two Joy-Con controllers. They come together as a package. You need both of them effectively. And what this says is they've made the same mistake they made with the Wii U, which is that they've designed a very complicated, for various reasons, and for whatever various reasons, expensive to make controller that adds a significant amount to the cost of the system that effectively cannot be gotten around. In other words, the Wii U was, even up until the day production ended, expensive for what it was, because the gamepad, the tablet controller, whatever you want to call it, basically added, was believed to be about $100 to the cost of the system, and it seems that these Joy-Cons are doing close to the same again. Nintendo might be sticking a huge, ridiculous profit margin onto the Joy-Cons, but I somehow think that's unlikely. I think they're being sold at a relatively narrow margin, and just because of the combination of the fact that they both have Bluetooth built into both of them, because they have to be used to remotely control the system. They both have lithium-ion batteries, rechargeable ones built into them. They've both got some kind of HD rumble and accelerometers and so on built into them. They are probably quite expensive to make. Certainly two of them combined are probably quite expensive to make. And that is adding, if that €75/$dollar price point is close to the actual cost of making them, then it's adding close to $100 to the cost of the system, which is, it's crazy / ridiculous. And it's, again, the same kind of, maybe it means that if, again, they suffer the same kind of sales crisis that the Wii U experienced starting really in early 2013, that they have no way to cut the price, because the controllers can't be removed from the system. They can't be replaced with low-cost alternatives because their core functionality, and they've just added a huge amount of cost to the system, and they can't get around it. And again, from what Digital Foundry said in particular, they said that it comes across as an incredibly impressive handheld, but a somewhat subpar home console. Now, apparently, the graphics architecture in the Tegra X1 is much more sophisticated and advanced than what's in the Wii U. Digital Foundry said in the most recent video they did on a kind of their reaction to the Switch, because a couple of people got to go to various events in Europe and both have a go at it and actually record capture video footage from it, not via camera now, but actually by sticking their an HDMI cable from the system into some video capture equipment they brought with them. That basically the Tegra X1 has about maybe twice the graphics power of the even in the Wii U even in Switch form, certainly when docked, that the Wii U has, but that because all the games that are being ported over to it are basically or being running on it are effectively ports of Wii U games, Zelda, Mario Kart, Splatoon, they can't really take advantage of the hardware or truly take advantage of it. So they look very Wii U-esque in terms of their graphics, and also things in areas that are weakness, such as texture filtering and so on, which is apparently quite weak on the Wii U. Again, appears to be some of these games, these Wii U ports to the Switch seems to be quite weak as well. Although it should be noted that there's at least a couple of months of development time to go yet before particularly Splatoon 2 and Mario Kart 8, what do they call it, Elite Edition or Switch Edition or whatever they're calling it, are released. So there may be improvements and optimizations between now and then. But again, even so, it's still, for $299 they're going to have no ability to cut the price because of the cost of the controllers. Again, this is a case of them taking money that could have gone and putting more powerful silicon in the box and spending it on gimmicks, which is kind of the, was the calling card of Satoru Iwata, the former CEO, the former now deceased CEO of Nintendo in his time in office. The Wii Mote was basically a glorified gimmick because it couldn't deliver on what it promised. At least this time with the Joy-Cons, Nintendo seems to have been genuinely investing the money to make them quite capable. But it's still, again, core and hardcore gamers that might spend 300 quid on a home console or even a portable, I don't think they're going to care at all about that. In fact, if anything, the combination of, effectively the Wiimote / PlayStation Move waggle experiment was overall a failure. Particularly if you're a core gamer standpoint, it didn't really result in any particularly AAA high quality games that were that genuinely innovative or improved upon, though games that were designed around conventional controllers. And it's just, it's a case of, if they've added all this extra cost, does it really add much in the way of meaningful value? I mean, a game, ARMS as an example, does look, it's got a high frame rate and, looks, good quality production, if not the most technologically state-of-the-art game. But to play that properly, to really enjoy it, you're going to play 2-player, and you need 4 Joy-Cons to do that, which means $299 for the system, another 80 quid for the Joy-Cons, and that game when it comes out is going to be like 40 quid or 50 quid, something like that. In the US, I'm going to do a separate video about the pricing here in little old Ireland. Just no one will probably watch it, but I can at least vent. So it's a case of, again, money they could have, money that was spent on the gamepad on the Wii U that could have been spent on putting more powerful chips on the box or in the box, seems to have happened here again potentially with the Joy-Cons. They clearly didn't take Iwata's death as an opportunity to step back and reassess their plans. The lack of Western presence, the lack of Western games announced, the lack of actual games, actual gameplay being shown from third parties, even Japanese ones. Those are all kind of huge issues. The price, the fact that it may be a very impressive handheld, but it's also, an underwhelming home console. And the fact is, the experience of PlayStation Vita, which is a great handheld, and I've got it. I don't have a 3DS, I have a PlayStation Vita. The PlayStation Vita, was based upon this idea, we'll build a Sony was, home console gaming on the go. They might have wanted that in Japan, but they wanted that in Japan because the home console market in Japan has imploded over the last 10 years. Both because the systems, because of consumption taxes there, are expensive. Young people who play video games in Japan don't tend to have an awful lot of money, and they play a lot of games particularly when they're commuting, and one can understand. I mean, in that respect, the Switch comes across as being very very Japan centric, which, considering how small, I mean, I think at this stage the Japanese home console market is less than 10% of the total global console market. Square Enix cannot make a big budget AAA Final Fantasy game and survive on the home console and survive on the Japanese sales alone. So the mobile market, again with the PlayStation Vita, the mobile market or handheld market in Japan is really the only game in town. So you get a lot of conventional, maybe console style games, or the games that typically would have been previously on home consoles in Japan are now going on portable instead. This is true of the PSP, which is very successful in Japan compared to where it was in the West, and it's true of the PlayStation Vita. The problem is in the West, home console gaming is not just healthy; it's stronger than it's ever been. The PlayStation 4 is an install base of, at this stage, more than 50 million units. Xbox One probably is, no one knows the official numbers, but that could be 20 to 30 million. So you're already talking rapidly gaining on 100 million plus install base for the existing current gen consoles after just 3 years of being on the market, which is literally less than half the total lifespan of the Xbox 360. And again, it's again the case of the PlayStation Vita. In the West, it tanked, one, because the memory cards were ridiculously expensive, and two, because Westerners don't want to play home console games on the go on small screens. They want different games you can't get on home console. And that's what I've done with the PlayStation Vita. I eventually bought that Uncharted game on the PlayStation Vita when it was on sale cheap, but I played it a little bit. The analog sticks on the Vita, to be honest with you, are too small and fiddly for use in a proper third-person shooter. I only played a bit of it, then lost interest. And basically, for me, the PlayStation Vita is this cool mobile device for playing indie games and those kind of video games, which I love on the PlayStation Vita, and it's great fun for those kind of games. And that's really it. And if it puts Nintendo in a kind of a rock and a hard place. If they say it's a home console game, it's a home console system, it's woefully inferior to the PS4 and the Xbox One. If they try and sell it as a home console gaming on the go, Japan might like that, but Europe and America will not. And again, the price of it, is taking into account it's 300 quid plus more on top for games, plus more on top for a Joy-Con controllers, or a classic controller, or pro controller, I think is what they're calling it. It's a lot of money. Only 5 games, of which 2 of them will be basically or at least one of them is kind of a casual mini game collection at launch. Some of the Japanese games that were announced are basically either only starting development now, or maybe only been in development for a year. We won't be seeing those for years. There's the games that Nintendo have announced for this year will be a fantastic launch lineup if they're available at launch, but they're spread over the rest of the year or so, and who knows, some of them might get delayed till next. So for me, there's kind of major question marks over this. It seems to have been, thought up using the same broken thinking that resulted in the Switch, or not the Switch, sorry, the Wii U, and overall it just looks like, a disaster waiting to happen. Whether it I mean, this is the thing. Nintendo keeps trying to sell it as a home console. My guess is that's a hedge. So if the system, falls flat on its face, they can come out a year, 2 years from now with a successor to the 3DS, and maybe they'll be able to make a go with that, because the 3DS install base is over 50 million units. But to my mind, again, this is the kind of broken thinking that's Satoru Iwata became known for, that they had success with, particularly with the DS, which I think was the only gimmick system that Nintendo came up with that truly worked and that truly delivered new and innovative gameplay. They went too cheap on the Wiimote for the Wii to work out, actually delivering what it promised. The Wii U was a train wreck. The 3DS was a ridiculously overpriced at launch, and again, the 3D effect on it it might kind of have a cool factor to, or a wow factor to it, but it doesn't really result in any innovations in actual gameplay, because since you can turn it off completely, the 3D, since you can turn it off completely, and every game for the system had to be designed to work with it off. So therefore, there was no potential for it to actually affect gameplay and game design in any real positive, meaningful way. So again, the 3DS's first 12 months in the market were a train wreck. They had to cut down the price from $249 to $160, which is a huge reduction, again, because it was massively overpriced. It was basically, if not obsolete, then certainly inferior technology when it was launched. Was it late 2010/early 2011, if memory serves? And again, that was the first, real warning sign that the new way of doing things at Nintendo under Iwata would come unstuck. The Wii U was simply the exclamation mark / confirmation of that trend, and this looks like an Iwata console through and through. And I think we might be on a home console slow death over the next 4 years, just like the Wii U. And I think, potentially it'll be a new handheld announced next year, launching next holiday, to fill the gap. And I would not be surprised, considering how, as a home console, how underpowered this is. Nintendo could easily launch a system on the Tegra X2 platform that would be as powerful, in fact more powerful, particularly on the CPU side, than the Switch. Get rid of those ridiculous Joy-Cons, and it would be literally cheaper to make than the Switch is, and therefore could be launched at, say, $249 or even $199. What I will say is that if this does end up being a train wreck, if this does end up being a Wii U Mark II, Nintendo will have to support it for 4 or 5 years at least, not to burn the Nintendo faithful that go out and buy it. But after that, particularly if third-party support is as bad or worse than it was in the Wii U, particularly from a Western standpoint, I do not know for the life of me how they're going to be able to. No one's going to go out, if you're not a Nintendo fanboy and this system is a Wii U type failure, no one is going to go out and spend $249, let alone $300, on a new Nintendo home console. It'll just be viewed as too risky an investment, considering how badly the Wii U has done, and if this system does that badly as well. And Nintendo were really going to be in, between a rock and a hard place. I mean, on my guess, the only thing they could do is come out with a budget system for like $199 that competes with the next generation systems from Microsoft and Sony, say 2 or 3 years after those systems come out. But that would mean leaving the home console side of the business for probably 4 years with the Switch. Then they stop making the Switch. Then maybe 2 years on top, where they're in limbo waiting for mobile tech to get cheap enough and for the next Xbox, the next PlayStation to come out, and then for them to build a system that would allow proper multi-platform support, but would be cheap enough to be a low-risk investment from the standpoint of consumers. So they might be able to take the risk on it. Either or, they could exit the home console business entirely and concentrate on portable. In which case, Iwata's legacy as the guy who killed the Nintendo home console will be secured, because this is clearly his baby, and it's full of the same, to my mind, flawed thinking that the Wii U and the 3DS suffered from. Anyway, this is Defub21. If you agree with me, say so in the comments and leave your own thoughts. If you don't agree with me, say so in the comments and leave your own thoughts. And whether you like this video or not, please like it. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do so for more content like this. This is Defub21 signing off. Toodaloo.